What we talk about when we talk about love is the fictitious Broadway play at the center of the 2014 film Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. It's the play the main character Regan has adapted from an actual 10-page Raymond Carver short story. Regan is starring in and producing the play in order to, ostensibly, prove that he's not just a mindless Hollywood hack celebrity, but is a passionate, talented, bona fide artist who needs to express himself. But what we talk about when we talk about love, not Carver's short story or the fictional play in the film, but the notion, the slippery what of love as it's talked about by humans, is also the heart of the film's matter. Its major theme. It's the question the film is asking. What is it that we actually do talk about when we talk about love? As Carver's playful phrasing suggests, what love is talked about, what it is when we try to put it into words, is no easily wrangled beast. Try it yourself sometime. Try to pin it down, love. Try to wrap words around love one day with someone you think you love, and listen to those words you're saying. What's said, I assure you, no matter how blessed your tongue, won't be the whole of it, won't ever contain love. What's said, even if you possess the gifts of a William Blake or a W.H. Auden, will just be an infuriatingly tiny sliver of what love is to you. And most likely what you'll end up talking about won't resemble your conception of love at all. Maybe it'll be the exact opposite of it, in fact. Now, before I go any further, I should mention that because the film won the Oscar for the Best Picture last year, and anyone listening to this will likely already know most of its particulars, I'm just going to skip the formalities of discussing the stunning performances turned in by the all-star cast led by Keaton and Ed Norton, and the remarkable technical achievement of Alejandro Iñárritu's direction, wherein the film appears to be shot in a single take without any cuts, a la Hitchcock's Rope, in order to just get down to the business of listening to the picture as it whispers about what we talk about when we talk about love. Because Iñárritu's story concerns a group of actors preparing for a Broadway play, and because its view of actors is the common conception of them as infantile, suffering from an insecurity-driven, attention-seeking, histrionic personality disorder, what the actors in the story talk about is not the kind of love associated with selfless devotion or contemptuous obsession, as the characters in Carver's story speak about, but rather what they talk about is something resembling a bottomless pit, an insatiable monster that would consume the love of planets and universes if gone unchecked. What the characters in Iñárritu's film are talking about is being loved, being beloved, which, though it's a fine point, admittedly, isn't exactly what most of us think about when we think about feeling love. Being beloved are the characters' motivations, no matter how much they try to disguise them or how adamant they insist on their ignorance of it. So just about all the main characters in the film are doing some version of the look at me war dance, but Regan, played by Keaton, is evidently preparing for the most violent battle. Regan is an action hero actor who's been aged out of the role that has won him the most adoration and who has since been gently shoved out of the Hollywood limelight. Casting Keaton in the role is, of course, a bit of a wink and a nod, given Keaton's own resume playing winged heroes on screen. And now I'm not sure what Keaton's personal Caped Crusader whispers to him, but in Regan's darker moments of vulnerability and self-doubt, he's visited upon by his fabricated hero self, his Birdman, who assuages his insecurities, assuring him that he could climb back into the superhero suit anytime he wants, that, in fact, he actually is the superhero, the Birdman. As the pressures of putting on his Broadway show mount, Regan becomes more and more prone to these hallucinatory lapses, and his discussions with his avian self becomes increasingly intense. He actually sees himself as possessing the superpowers his fictional character did, and those powers become greater as he becomes increasingly uncertain about the play. He tries to remain sane, tries to keep the Birdman contained, but the difficulties of doing so are tantamount to the difficulties of producing a Raymond Carver adaptation. Ultimately, what Regan is combating is the phantasmagoric manifestation of his narcissism. The narcissist, after all, is the most insecure of all human creatures, and so tells himself, in order to remain wholly ignorant of those insecurities and inadequacies, that he is, in fact, superior to everyone around him, and thus deserves their adoration. This is the crux of Regan's inner dialogue. This is what he talks about with himself when he talks about being beloved. And it's this discussion that provides the underpinning of the film. The centerpiece is Regan's inner dialogue, but like I said, it's the dialogue of all the other character interactions as well. The words they use to talk about it and around it and through it, the form their discussions take, is not one unfamiliar here on the Cutting Room Movie Podcast. It has something to do with the dichotomies of art versus commerce, with the virtuous versus the shill, with the fine versus the cheap, with the beautiful versus the lowest common denominator. On one side, Regan has the lobotomized action porn superhero spectacles of the megaplexes, and on the other, he has the patron saint of the understated, Raymond Carver, of quiet Sunday morning paperbacks. Whether true or not, the characters go to great lengths to convince themselves that they've moved past their daddy issues, that they've made it on the stage, that they have talent, that they don't need superficial adulation because they're bona fide artists expressing themselves with, quote, complex human emotions, unquote. Regan's Birdman nearly kills him in his efforts to convince him that his real motivation for producing this artsy-fartsy play of his is merely a pretentious ruse, a self-delusion designed merely to win him adulation that he's been telling himself that he doesn't need, and that the most honest thing he can do is to readorn the superhero getup and give the people what they want. In other words, to cut the bullshit, the Birdman needs to fly. Regan recognizes that there's more than just a little truth in what Birdman is telling him, that he's been willfully ignorant of his own petty motivations, and that he secretly just wants to be the fucking Birdman and zoom around the city above it all. The fact that his realization coincides with an important New York Times critic threatening to pan the play before she'd even seen it is no coincidence, of course. Ultimately, the war becomes too much for Regan and he succumbs. Finally, unignorant, finally aware that he's just been talking about love, about hoarding all of it he can get all along. Shell-shocked and battle-weary, he gives in, he waves the white flag. But it turns out his inner war was not waged in vain. His ignorance has had an unexpected virtue and has produced a bona fide work of vibrant and meaningful art. A work of art that spills metaphorical and actual blood on the stage. A work of art that, ironically, wins him the love that he sought, but told himself he didn't need. Jesus, what cruelty is art, to be the spoil of such a violent war. In the exhausted aftermath, as he lies in a hospital bed recovering from his battle wounds, the question for Regan becomes, is the love he's won enough? For the artist, is any amount of love ever enough?
Thank you, Joe. As always, wonderful stuff. You're welcome. No problem. Hey, we've covered in Aratu before, as fans of the show know. We did Babel, and I introduced Babel, and it's his stuff, his work is very layered and very thoughtful. So your intro was absolutely fantastic, Joe. Thank you for that.
Yeah, just one take on it. It's kind of deconstruct what's happening in there, and it's one interpretation, man. There's a lot going on in there,
But
obviously.
I think you get to the heart of what's going on here, and that's love and acceptance.
Yeah.
And
Yep.
that's what we're dealing with here, and that's just a very, I mean, that's just a very common human thing. And
Right.
as fantastic as this film is, it's basically about simple human emotion.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah. I mean, it doesn't get any more rudimentary than the need for love, right?
Absolutely, and he really delivers a striking piece here, man. And it was an absolute pleasure to witness.
Yeah, man. I mean, I saw this twice. I saw it in the theater, and then obviously every time, man, you see a movie for the second time. It happened last week too when we were talking about one of those films. It's just that you see everything just clarifies itself when they're talking about oh, it was one of those Reichardt films, the Old Joy, like we were talking about the main theme in that,
Right.
and then this one too, I was like, oh, this is about love, I kind of sort of knew what it was, and then seeing it this for the second time, it really just made a lot of sense to me that, it's all these actors, they need a lot of love and self assurance, and then
Right.
and I had that kind of notion going into it, and then everything that was happening on the screen seemed to me to be related to that, you know what I mean?
Sure. I'm kind of disappointed though that I didn't get to hear you say "cut off your nose to spite your face."
There
I
you
really,
go.
really thought that was coming. As a matter of fact, I had a bet with someone that you were gonna go there. and you didn't, Joe. I'm kind of let down a little bit.
You can't predict how somebody, how someone's gonna what someone's gonna
All
take on
right,
a
so
film.
listen, it's forget the fact that this is a huge film and it won the best picture. And, I always hate to say, well, it won deservedly so, because there's just so many, there's so many great films. I mean, how do we really just pick one film and just call it the best picture of the year? I mean, it's great for the people that work on the film that they get a little prize, and, I'm sure it's all nice and everything. Forget
Like that critic says in the movie, you hand yourself awards for making cartoons.
Yeah, yeah. Well, she's no better than what she thinks he is. With
Even
her
worse.
ignorance.
Yeah, well, even worse because at least they're going
Even
through the paces of trying to be productive and creative. And
right,
it's true, man. Lazy criticism is fucking
right.
just
And
vitriol,
that was one of the best exchanges in the movie. Probably one of his uh, best deliveries in his entire career, and it is a great career. I mean, no, I mean, we've talked about Michael Keaton here on the past when we did Night Shift, and we, spent a good 15, 20 minutes just, waxing poetic about how amazing this guy is, how he has tremendous range, and is really just one of the most underrated actors that have existed over the past couple decades. Yeah, that critic, I mean, that scene really pulled me in, because
yeah,
you know
yeah.
what I'm saying. And you're right, like, lazy criticism, and then you think to yourself that people are being judged by someone that is, like, has this high opinion that people are flocking to, and it's all insincere. What she's delivering to the masses is complete insincerity.
Well, she ultimately redeems herself, right? Not to give a spoiler away, but yeah, I mean, what she says is there's a lot of truth that she's going to pan the film before she even I mean, not the film, the play before she even sees it, and, and it becomes about her own, her own issues and grudges that she has against this or that or the other thing. It's all personal bullshit,
Right, right. I love this in our Ratu guy, Joe. I really do.
Yeah,
I mean,
man.
because Babel really moved me, and I remember Billy really. I am curious to hear what Billy thinks of Birdman.
He loved this. He
See,
did
that's
when he
odd, because he really hated Babel. He hated the fact that I liked Babel. He did. Like, he was just like, it's a bunch of nonsense. It's boy, he really bashed me for liking Babel, though. And Babel's an excellent film.
I think so, man. I like all this stuff.
Loved it.
Yeah. I don't know. I can't figure Billy out, man, to be honest with you.
Yeah, who can?
The stuff that he doesn't like is, I mean, it's amazing to me.
All right.
You know?
You know what? We're also in one of these situations here on the show, Joe, that I forget before we start recording. Adam and Jeff, have you ever been on the show together?
Yeah, first time.
All right.
Is this
So,
this is the first time?
Yeah.
so you've never even said hello, introduced each other. I didn't even go through that process.
No, I was just going to ignore him until you introduced us.
We
So,
were both doing a really good job of that, man.
Yeah.
Adam and Jeff, say hello.
Hey,
Hey, how's it going, man?
good. How you doing?
Let me get that out of the way.
Good to
I,
do the
sh-
show with you.
I
Yeah.
should have done that off air, but why not do it here? Let's start with Adam and his.
All right, well, listen, first, almost every time I'm on the show when Max isn't on the show, at some point you guys try to pick my brain about what kind of movies he likes and, trying to figure it out. I'd like to play that game right now. I know the answer to this. Do you guys know? And if you don't, you guys think he was a fan of this movie or not a fan of this movie?
Oh, Max?
Yeah.
He says it's a snooze fest, I'm sure.
Yeah,
Well, he does like Keaton. He does like
loves
Michael
Keaton.
Keaton.
He loves
Yeah,
Keaton, but
that's
Adam wouldn't be asking this question if I think Max didn't like it.
That's correct, Tom. He did
Yeah.
not like this movie, yes. Was
Yeah.
not a
yeah.
fan. Uh,
It's such a snooze
Yeah.
fest. It's like drowning in molasses.
What is
I loved
that?
it. I walked out of this film when I saw it, early on when it was first released out here in LA, and regardless of it winning Best Picture or not, I walked out of there thinking that was the best movie that I saw last year. It
Yeah,
completely with me. I
it's
loved I love the director. I love movies that are layered and philosophical and
Mhm.
complex and play with the language of cinema in such a beautiful way. And it's just such a nice vision and just such an art to it. And he does a great job with it. And really, really special movie, I thought.
Right. And if you could create scenes that are so powerful that they're rewatchable over and over and over again, and you could find different meaning in each of these scenes every time you watch it, that says a lot, Adam. And I
Oh,
think
absolutely.
and that's what's going on here in Birdman. Like, I mean, just thinking about it now and talking about this film with you guys, all these like scenes are like, and it's so great, Joe, because the film seems like seamless, but it's just
Yeah.
basically like it's one scene after another, right? It's just the
Yeah.
scene here and like a scene, the next scene, and it's just so interesting. Each scene is just like its own story almost.
Yeah, it's amazing. Well, listen, man, that one scene when Michael Keaton first engages Ed Norton on stage
Fucking incredible.
is fucking incredible, man.
Incredible. See, and
And it
that
really is. It really flows like a play almost. It just the actors up there doing their thing, and having that background in acting, that just resonates so much with the idea of having a part that you can just play with and a director who allows you to do your thing and just lets the actors run with it, and then you get those amazing scenes like that.
yeah.
Adam, you've acted and you have a background in acting, correct?
That's right.
So watching a movie like this should like you long to do work on film or on a stage, I'm sure, right?
Well, I've done a lot of stuff on stage. And I enjoy it, but only with I enjoy working with a select group of people out here in LA. But I actually haven't been on stage in about 10 years now, and all the
Okay.
work I've done since has been either behind the camera or just on camera stuff, but little things here and there. But
Yeah.
Watching a film like this and watching the process, watching the actors process, watching the actors just whole love affair with life and stage and screen and family and friends and art and so on and so forth. Does it drive you to do you get that acting that little acting buzz going?
it does a little bit. It does. And, like I was saying, I work with a group of people out here that I've known for 25 years, and one of them is a playwright. Max has worked with him many times. I've worked with him many times, and he does original stuff. And it's just a group of really talented people that have worked with each other for so long. And like I said, it's been a long time now since I've done this, but it's just you just get caught up in the project. And it's funny because we talk about the movie certainly addresses it with the scene you guys were talking about with the critic, and it's like a lot of this is just coming out of just narcissism and just liking to be on stage and being the center of attention. But when you're doing it, you're so in that moment, and it is so important. It's so important.
But so you've known a lot of actors, and I have too. I mean, I've just auditioning actors, having actors in my films and short films and stuff. You definitely have to recognize that there's a lot of truth in all these,
Absolutely.
just like these histrionics that they go into. I think it's called histrionic. You would
Yeah,
probably know
yeah,
this too.
that's correct.
Histrionic personality disorder, right? Like it's almost universally, like, even I just like going to the school plays here. Like, I just see these kids, and some people are just prone or
Definitely.
just gone to having this like need for like sucking in the attention in a room. You know what I mean? There's
Oh,
definitely.
absolutely. I've seen both sides of it. I've actually seen, the actors that take it really seriously and go the other, the real internalized, sort of, guys that meant a few words and I'm doing my part. And after the show, I'm going to leave. I'm not hanging out with anybody.
But even
I'm not,
that even
I'm not going
even
up.
that posture,
So
like even
stupid.
that posture, is kind of like the Ed Norton character. Like, I'm an artist, you don't know anything, and yet there he goes. He could like poses like in his underwear or whatever for the New York Times and steals the fucking the ad. You know what I mean? So it's like just all this like like they know how to play it to suit themselves better, to make them even look better than the other actors, to get the better attention than the other ones. You know what I
Well,
mean?
and so
It's
much of it at that level of if you're acting at that level, so much of it is just get attention. There, the no such thing as bad press. Get attention, just get seen
right.
because it's just about getting seen.
Yeah, sure.
And
I agree with the underwear ad, Joe. Why not?
But it's funny because he's the only one who, like, you're sort of led to believe who's doing this out of like this great need for artistic expression, and there he goes. He friggin' steals the rug right
Well, he
out from
steals the
underneath.
directing job too, basically. Like the first time they get together on stage, and we were just talking about this scene. He totally flips that shit on
I know.
Riggin Thompson, and he's making Thompson think that like what's happening on stage is because of him being the director, and it's just like he's just completely controlling the situation.
I know, because he can't handle somebody else getting the attention. You know what I mean? Like it's just like that's why I was seeing this, and that's how I focused that intro there. It's just like it was just striking to me. You know what I mean?
He is fantastic, Norton, and I got to tell you, these actors all give so much to this film, and they give a lot to Inarritu. I mean, I didn't look this up, but I know for a fact that Norton is a notorious non-smoker, and he has denied smoking cigarettes on screen throughout his entire career. There was a movie called Rounders where he had arguments with the director because the director and the writer insisted that his character would be a cigarette smoker. He said, "I'm not doing it. I have no, I can't, I can't." I can't do it on screen. I can't do it as an actor. But in this film, he's for some reason he's doing it, man. And that's just giving that to me says they're just giving this director everything that they could possibly give, and that's why the film works so well.
oh yeah, look at the results. Exactly.
Yeah, and this soundtrack, Jeff, huh? The
Yeah, that's great. One thing that all right. So there was things I liked about the movie. There's a lot that I didn't like. I did like the soundtrack. I didn't like the intrusion of the drummer into the picture.
Oh, okay, that's interesting.
There
Yeah,
was-
let's talk about that.
I don't know.
It's phantasmagoric.
There's a 50-cent word for it.
Yeah. I don't know. It kind of like him walking down the street and that guy, playing the drums that we're all here. There was just something about it that sort of like rang false to me.
Yeah, I hear you.
And especially because it only happens there, and then there's that one scene backstage towards the end where he hears them, and I mean, if I watch it again, I might be able to pick up on a like reason for that drummer being there for just those two times, but on the first watch, it just didn't do it for me.
That's Joe. Like that, he's like really picky about that.
I know, that's the thing. It would have never. It didn't even occur to me. Like it just like it melted.
Now watch
into
the second thing he has a problem with is Edward Norton smoking cigarettes.
Well, actually, in that, did he not want to smoke cigarettes personally, or he didn't want to be seen on screen?
It was
having a
just
cigarette.
it was something I read that he doesn't want to advocate it at all. Like
Okay.
in any way. Like he thinks it's disgusting, it's bad. Well, it is. I mean, it's all these things, and he just doesn't want to have any part of it for any reason.
Yeah.
Oh, where's Max? Right now?
Maybe he,
I like my disgusting cigarette.
Yeah, Joe.
he
I like this. I never liked this Ed Norton guy until now because he was smoking cigarettes.
That's right. That's what it is.
Go on, Jeff.
he might, maybe he felt like this character was, such a clown that it was, the people watching would know to associate like this
That's
is
funny.
so far from what his reality. I don't know. I mean, it's
clown, but listen, as much of a clown as that character is, like that when he's on stage with Keaton, he's elevating that play though, which is the amazing thing. Like that dud, the actor they had before with the light on his head.
Yeah, that was there. I love bad, like when someone is a bad actor in a movie, like when they're playing a bad actor. There's like that special like, oh, that special brand of intentional overacting that I really love. And like
That's so weird.
he like when that whatever the guy who the first guy like just starts like belting it out with so much like over emotion.
Yeah, yeah. And then the light falls on his head.
Yeah.
Now, was this done intentionally by Regan Thompson? I mean, he kind of took credit for that light falling, didn't he?
Yeah, I don't. That's
I don't know.
Because you get the impression that he could actually, in the reality of this of the film, like have these psychokinetic powers, because like that's
right.
such an odd coincidence.
Right. That's a good point. So listen, you don't like the drums.
No. Well, I like the drums. I don't
you don't like the guy being shown playing the drums.
Yeah.
Okay. What else don't you like?
Man, I feel like.
Oh boy.
This movie did pull. I see a lot of negativity and like a lot of negative comments about this movie out there.
Are you serious?
I think so.
But
I
you
mean,
know what? I think a lot of people, it was a love it or hate it kind of film.
That's what I
But
think.
you know
too,
what?
yeah.
I think a lot of movies that would fall into your category here of phantasmagoria. I think a lot of times people don't know what to do with that. Like I remember. Okay, here's a perfect example. First time I saw Crouching Tiger, Hidden Dragon. I thought it was one of the most beautiful movies I'd ever seen. Like I thought it was fantastic. Like I encouraged everyone to go see it. And love it or hate it, a lot of people came back and they didn't like it because they didn't get why like these people were flying around. It's like people don't fly. It's like, yeah, but in this world they fly.
Right.
This is just how it is. It's like I think a lot of people were confused by like, did he have these powers? Didn't he? Was it in his head? Was he crazy? Was he and I think sometimes that confusion distances people from the film.
Yeah, because right, Adam. It confuses anyone that doesn't have any kind of absolution, to what they're watching. If you leave something up to the viewer to decide for themselves, there's always
it makes people panicky.
Yeah, just like and I don't mean to bring this up, Joe, but just and Adam will know what I'm talking about. I mean, just look at the final scene of The Sopranos.
The controversy.
Yeah, when you just leave something up to the viewer to decide, to think about, to determine, it's just people. It's so funny, Joe. They really don't like it. They shy away from it. They need their spoon-fed, absolutions.
Yeah, well, it comes up over and over again, man. I mean, the fact that this one was able to become so beloved and still have a lot of open-ended questions about exactly what it is that it meant says a lot about it, man. I mean, listen, I was listening to a David Lynch movie interview a while ago, and he's like, the trick is you could make abstraction and weird and surrealism and absurd scenes and everything, but the trick is to keep people to watch,
Right.
So like there's this weird balance where yes, you're gonna alienate a certain portion of an audience who just won't accept the film unless it has the Fast and Furious ending to it. You know what I mean?
The Furious.
But just like an ending that just ties everything up tight. You know what I mean?
Right.
But you there's a chance where you can win people over and still have people really enjoying the film and still have those questions open. That's the sign of a really good film.
Of course it is.
That's what's great about the Raymond Carver stories themselves. To sort of tie that in. They're like those endings are. He either sort of ends it like if you say like a story has a point where it should end, if you're sort of a like standard writer, like he always ends it a little bit before or even a little bit after, and it's
nothing spelled out in Raymond Carver, man. I mean, it took me It took me basically 3 reads to get a decent read on that one short story. Like I read it twice. Like I've read it before,
Yeah.
pretty recently actually, and I just read it twice to really try to figure out what the fuck was, like what was happening in the story. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Even though it's like obvious, it's very simple. But it's just that you feel that there's something that he's just he's trying to convey and to tell you, but you really need to lean into it and to pull it out,
Yeah.
and that's it's a beautiful thing. So what is the other thing that bothers you about
Oh yeah.
it?
Anyway, so I had about 10 minutes there to sort of articulate it. So to formulate it, to articulate it. So what? All right. The best way I could describe. I liked how he was saying, in the R2 was saying what he was saying, but there was something about what he was saying that, like, we're going to be talking about Terry Gilliam next week, and I watched what's it called, Imaginarium of Dr. Parnassus, maybe like a year ago, and it basically was 2.5 hours of someone being upset that time is passing him by. Meaning Terry Gilliam. Like he's like, oh man, people don't like stories anymore. And it's like the whole movie is basically him having a temper tantrum that things aren't the way that he likes them to be.
Gilliam's having the temper tantrum.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Where in reality, like, it's 2009. That's just not the world anymore. And I kind of, and it not that Inyaritu's saying the same thing, but there's just that he had he was mad at superhero movies and mad at or like had contempt for the stage.
Huh.
Like he was just full of all these people were.
But you don't have a problem with someone having issues with big budget superhero films or perhaps even the stage. What you don't like is the execution here. The way he's saying it bothered you.
Like it seemed like someone who's been criticized.
Yeah,
criticizing the people that
it's a bit. You're sensing a bit of sour grapes.
Yeah,
or something.
that's
like that.
that's 2 words could have just summed that up.
That's interesting.
It is interesting. It is interesting. And why, Jeff?
And
why?
He also, I'm sorry, and another. He also seems like someone who does not like he's heard of comedy, but he doesn't understand how it works. Like none of the humor in it was, it was like, I was going to say it was like a foreigner do, but I guess that is an apt thing to say, but just seemed like someone who doesn't understand the language of comedy.
I disagree. I think it's there, and I think it's different here, Jeff. I mean, and we just talked before about when Norton comes in on that stage for the first time and he takes over that stage. I was fucking laughing my ass off. Joe brought up that underwear ad. It's completely fucking hilarious. I mean,
that's fun. I don't think that. I mean, that him taking over the play is funny. I don't think it was funny on purpose. Like I think that was.
You don't think
when he's trying to have sex with Naomi Watts' character?
No, when he's first doing the table reading.
Oh, when they first meet.
Yeah.
I don't know. I did find a lot of that pretty damn. I don't know. I thought a lot of it was pretty damn funny. I thought a lot of it was pretty funny.
I did too. That's what I'm saying. I'm disagreeing. It's all right to disagree with Joe. Tell him he's wrong. Somebody tell Adam, jump in here. Tell the fucking kid he's wrong.
I'm trying to figure out.
I thought it was very funny. I too. I mean, there was all kinds of humor to it. I hear what you're saying with the sour grapes, although I don't. It just felt like if it's there, it was really hidden, because I feel like a lot of those points about the sort of the big comic book movies and the stage really went more to character, because it was such a character-driven piece as opposed to the overall theme. I thought that it didn't feel that sour grapes that you're sensing from it.
Yeah, I mean, I guess that's just the way it's sort of it's skewed to the director saying it rather than
Again,
characters.
it just shows that the fact that there are different interpretations of the sort of the themes and the philosophies put forward is, I think, another just mark and indicator it's a great film.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I also think that, like, on the other hand, he does sort of try to present like a balanced view of that in like as represented by his daughter, who, shows him the power and the virtues of social media and mainstream mass culture type of stuff, and how he ultimately learns that there is value in that. You know what I mean? So I think he does try to present a fair look at it, because look, one of the most cutting dialogues or monologues in that is delivered by his daughter, when it just shows him how much of an asshole he is and has been because of exactly what he said. When that Emma Stone has that just tears him a friggin' new ass.
Yeah.
That in that one scene, man, is just it's just pretty incredible.
Everybody's coming at him.
There you. I think your gout is getting into your computer again, Tom.
There's gout in the computer.
There's gout in the computer.
Definitely.
I think it's got a little bit of gout in.
Just a flavor of it.
Hold on, let me just pop a pill. We goutless.
Take some more medication.
Did you? You got.
Tom, did you ever get your medication last week when you were trying to yell at us through your gout-filled computer?
I did. Yeah.
It's still cutting.
Gouty.
Yeah.
It's
very gouty.
It's a little gouty right now. What can I do, Joe? It's just a constant nightmare.
It is a nightmare, Tom. It's like a nightmare.
I need to know if I'm sleeping better, though.
Do you have dial-up?
We'll give it a minute.
Is it dial-up? Or do you have
dial-up?
DSL? Is it DSL?
He's got a cup on a string attached to his computer. He's yelling into it.
It's probably solar flares.
Well, listen, I'm
in the sun.
I'm gonna begin the process of saying goodbye to Birdman and interrupt you. Why are you giggling, Joe?
Go ahead. Lead us out.
All right, forget.
What does Charlie Brown always say? What's his
good
grief?
Good grief, Charlie Brown.
What the?
Except now he's be saying it in a digitized voice. Good grief.
I just want to do this outro, Joe. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast is brought to you by Christiana Productions and New Media Limited. The show is edited and co-produced by Joseph Schreck and produced by Thomas Detloff and Joe Christiana. We'd also like to thank our associate producer, Jeremy Garcia of Dartboard Cinema. Go check out his podcast. You can like us on Facebook at the Cutting Room Movie Podcast and follow us on Twitter at Cutting Room Podcast at TCRMP1. And you can follow me on Twitter at Thomas Detloff at TCRM Podcast. Now, you could also check out Jeff Schreck. He's going to be reading some of his fiction at the Mill Hill Basement Bar in Trenton, New Jersey.
Is that right?
On Thursday, May 14th, along with Michael T. Furrier, who's the author of the novel Swing State and the Minutemen Double Nickels on the Dime installment of the 33 1/3 book series. Joe Evans from Staying in Zion, and a couple of bands that they're going to announce will be playing along with them. So definitely support Jeff if you're in the Trenton area in New Jersey on Thursday, May 14th. You could also check out Joe's film work at ChristianaProductions.com. Check out Adam's new show, Starland PC, at StarlandPC.com. And check out Max and Adam's Bowler Hat Productions and their Mimosa Podcast show at Max Cook and thecounselor.com. And don't forget about Max's blog. He's hard at work over there at maxcookuncork.com. Music from The Cutting Room is done by the Zillatones. Check them out at www.thezillatones.com or search for The Zillatones at ReverbNation.com. We're coming back next week with more phantasmagoria, including the 1950 film Harvey, starring James Stewart, and Terry Gilliam's 1985 film Brazil. Until then, we're over and we're out. Ciao.
Tune in next time to satisfy more of your strange desires. The Cutting Room Movie Podcast. We do chicken right.
Casting Keaton in the role is, of course, a bit of a wink and a nod, given Keaton's own resume playing winged heroes on screen. And now I'm not sure what Keaton's personal Kate Crusader whispers to him, but in Regan's darker moments of vulnerability and self-doubt, he's visited upon by his fabricated hero self, his Birdman, who assuages his insecurities, assuring him that he could climb back into the superhero suit anytime he wants, that, in fact, he actually is the superhero, the Birdman. As the pressures of putting on his Broadway show mount, Regan becomes more and more prone to these hallucinatory lapses, and his discussions with his avian self becomes increasingly intense. He actually sees himself as possessing the superpowers his fictional character did, and those powers become greater as he becomes increasingly uncertain about the play. He tries to remain sane, tries to keep the Birdman contained, but the difficulties of doing so are tantamount to the difficulties of producing a Raymond Carver adaptation. Ultimately, what Regan is combating is the phantasmagoric manifestation of his narcissism. The narcissist, after all, is the perception of them as infantile, suffering from an insecurity-driven, attention-seeking, histrionic personality disorder. What the actors in the story talk about is not the kind of love associated with selfless devotion or contemptuous obsession, as the characters in Carver's story speak about, but rather what they talk about is something resembling a bottomless pit. An insatiable monster that would consume the love of planets and universes if gone unchecked. What the characters in Inarritu's film are talking about is being loved, being beloved, which, though it's a fine point, admittedly, isn't exactly what most of us think about when we think about feeling love. Being beloved are the characters' motivations, no matter how much they try to disguise them or how adamant they insist on their ignorance of it. So just about all the main characters in the film are doing some version of the look at me war dance, but Regan, played by Keaton, is evidently preparing for the most violent battle. Regan is an action hero actor who's been aged out of the role that has won him the most adoration, and who has since been gently shoved out of the Hollywood limelight. Wrap words around love one day with someone you think you love, and listen to those words you're saying. What's said, I assure you, no matter how blessed your tongue, won't be the whole of it, won't ever contain love. What's said, even if you possess the gifts of a William Blake or a W.H. Auden, will just be an infuriatingly tiny sliver of what love is to you. And most likely what you'll end up talking about won't resemble your conception of love at all. Maybe it'll be the exact opposite of it, in fact. Now, before I go any further, I should mention that because the film won the Oscar for the Best Picture last year, and anyone listening to this will likely already know most of its particulars, I'm just going to skip the formalities of discussing the stunning performances turned in by the all-star cast led by Keaton and Ed Norton, and the remarkable technical achievement of Alejandro Iñárritu's direction, wherein the film appears to be shot in a single take without any cuts, a la Hitchcock's Rope, in order to just get down to the business of listening to the picture as it whispers about what we talk about when we talk about love. Because Iñárritu's story concerns a group of actors preparing for a Broadway play, and because its view of actors is the common What we talk about when we talk about love is the fictitious Broadway play at the center of the 2014 film Birdman, or The Unexpected Virtue of Ignorance. It's the play the main character Regan has adapted from an actual 10-page Raymond Carver short story. Regan is starring in and producing the play in order to, ostensibly, prove that he's not just a mindless Hollywood hack celebrity, but is a passionate, talented, bona fide artist who needs to express himself. But what we talk about when we talk about love, not Carver's short story or the fictional play in the film, But the notion, the slippery what of love as it's talked about by humans, is also the heart of the film's matter. Its major theme. It's the question the film is asking. What is it that we actually do talk about when we talk about love? As Carver's playful phrasing suggests, what love is as talked about, what it is when we try to put it into words, is no easily wrangled beast. Try it yourself sometime. Try to pin it down, love. Try to the most insecure of all human creatures, and so tells himself, in order to remain wholly ignorant of those insecurities and inadequacies, that he is, in fact, superior to everyone around him, and thus deserves their adoration. This is the crux of Regan's inner dialogue. This is what he talks about with himself when he talks about being beloved. And it's this discussion that provides the underpinning of the film. The centerpiece is Regan's inner dialogue, but like I said, it's the dialogue of all the other character interactions as well. The words they use to talk about it and around it and through it, the form their discussions take, is not one unfamiliar here on the Cutting Room Movie Podcast. It has something to do with the dichotomies of art versus commerce, with the virtuous versus the shill, with the fine versus the cheap, with the beautiful versus the lowest common denominator. On one side, Regan has the lobotomized action porn superhero spectacles of the megaplexes, and on the other he has the patron saint of the understated, Raymond Carver, of quiet Sunday morning paperbacks. Whether true or not, the characters go to great lengths to convince themselves that they've moved past their daddy issues